Angela Merkel will come to America, and she represents a multilateral perspective, a multilateral Europe. As a member of the domestic politics of Germany, how would you like her to explain German multilateralism to President Trump?
I'm out of German politics for many years now, but I can tell you what she represents on multilateralism, that's reflected everywhere in the European Union. And I believe that she can be convincing to President Trump when it comes to preserving this wealth of cooperation which we have under the multilateral umbrella. I think any departure from that would cost us a lot politically and economically.
President, what is the biggest challenge for the European Investment Bank right now? If you have to look at the top 3 priorities that you need to do in the next 12 months, is there something in your control that you need to get done?
Well, number one, I'd say we have read the IMF report that came out this week, and that shows some dark clouds on the horizon, and we have to prepare for that. As long as the sun is shining, you better repair your roof. And that's also the message from the IMF. It's the message from the European Investment Bank, the EU Bank. Secondly, we have to look back to the last 10 years. We in Europe have been mainly looking inward in the last 10 years, and we have not realized that the time when we were fighting the euro crisis, the financial crisis, the rest of the world has moved forward. When it comes to research, development, innovation, our main competitors in the world have spent per year 1 to 1.5% of GDP more on research, development and innovation than we in Europe have. And that leads to a lack or to receding productivity growth and to a lack of competitiveness. So the Europeans need to catch up on this. This, in my view, the key thing. After we have done the counter-cyclical work, more or less, it has been successful.
But is it difficult, and sometimes it's unfair to talk about the Europeans? Germany is very different to France. France is very different to Italy, which is very different to Greece.
Well, we have quite a diversity in Europe, and that is not a surprise, but we have dealt with that quite well. 10 years ago, everybody in the United States would have said that the Eurozone is going to fall apart anyway. It has not fallen apart. It has become stronger, as a matter of fact. So I'm not that much worried about the regional differences. We have to work on it, and we can do that. But what we must make sure is that Europe's relative weight in the world does not reduce, is not reduced. And that means we have to modernize societies, but also industries and our economic performance.
This is incredibly important, and one of the themes here, you've talked before of a new Marshall Plan and a new sense of investment for your bank and for all of Europe. How do you compare and contrast the need for investment in Europe with the solid day after day discourse we see out of China for new China and new Asian investment? Are you looking east across Russia to Asia, or you're looking to the Atlantic when you look at comparative investment?
Well, the European nations are transatlantic-oriented nations, no doubt, but we are in the global economy, and China has emerged as an enormously strong partner. We need not be naive when it comes to the strategic orientation of China, but of course we need to cooperate with China. We do it on the One Belt, One Road initiative and other things, but on the other hand, the key relationship that must be preserved if we want to keep the West intact, the community of rule of law-based, enlightened democracy, then we must strengthen the relationship between the United States and Europe again. And this is why I'm optimistic that the Chancellor will deliver that message to President Trump.
This is critical then. Can you do that with the present administration in the United States, where many say they have tinges of mercantilism? If you need to reaffirm the Western bloc, can you do that with the present administration?
At least we have to try, because the departure from multilateralism, as I said, would cost us dearly. And it's not in the interest of the European nations, and I believe it's not in the interest of the American consumer, producer, individual citizen.
But has the Trump administration changed the way that we do diplomacy? And has it changed the way that Europe should speak as a whole?
Well, the European Union has never been closer together than after the decisions on the American presidency, and even more important than the decision of Brexit. So that has brought the rest of the 27 in the European Union, closer together than ever. That is helpful. But we must not give up on our dialogue with the United States of America. This is our key relationship, and I think we should try to do everything in order to convince the new administration. However, the election of the new American president is now already 15, 16 months ago, and still many offices in the State Department and elsewhere are still unfilled. So we are still waiting for a fully acting American administration here.
President, I believe you're about to issue a new green bond, right, for investors or something like that. Is there appetite? Is there real demand?
That's a misunderstanding. We were the avant-garde, the first issuers of green bonds, and worldwide we are today the by far largest issuer of green bonds, and that flies extremely well. That's a huge success story. We must now go one step further. The Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, to which we all subscribed happily 3 years ago, that must be brought to life now, and that means crowding in the private sector in order to reach these objectives, and that means we need to have new papers on the markets. We have launched the issuance of sustainability papers, some sustainability bonds today, and I believe the market is there. We're going to test it now. We are going to try to come to an international consensus on the criteria and principles of sustainability bonds, and I'm quite optimistic.
Right. Our Bloomberg audience knows that you have to look east as well, to Eastern Europe. We had the interesting Hungarian elections recently, and of course all the discussion of Russia. What is your plans for the next 12 months at the European Investment Bank to strengthen Eastern Europe and strengthen the Baltic states?
We have been, I think, considerably successful in strengthening Eastern Europe and what we call cohesion policies, getting the European nations together, including the eastern ones. There are regional differences. It has worked out on the economic front with Poland and the Baltic states very, very well, and the Central European nations as well. We have still problems in the south-east of Europe, but it would be a strategic mistake not to produce the perspectives also for the countries of the Western Balkans. That is going to be in the foreground of the presidency of the European Union held by Bulgaria, afterwards by Romania and Austria. So this is going to be the focus of the next 2 years.
What is the question that you get the most, or that you got the most here at the IMF from investors?
How do you see the overall climate? How does the change in the geopolitical environment impact the economic perspectives, not only in Europe but worldwide? And what does that mean for the rebalancing of weights in the world economy and in world politics? So that's the key question. We are moving towards a multipolar world, and that is going to be very, very significant, in particular for the Europeans who have to secure their place in the world economy.